As Donald Trump struggles to regain traction in the presidential race, he's now dealing with a controversy over some of the most hallowed ground in America, as well as a new criminal indictment that tries to thread the needle of a Supreme Court ruling.
President Trump did find one candidate at justice who seemed willing to do anything to help him stay in power.
Damning allegations, Donald Trump tried to recruit top Justice Department officials to overturn the 2020 election. Allegations you won't find in the new indictment filed by special counsel Jack Smith.
I think this is a tactical retreat of sorts.
Smith trying to salvage his case after the Supreme Court ruled Trump's dealings with justice were official acts and therefore immune from prosecution. Trump calling the revised charges election interference.
When you look at how they go weaponized against me, they're doing absolutely nothing wrong.
Meanwhile, Trump's dealing with fallout from his visit to Arlington National Cemetery to honor the 13 service members killed during the Afghanistan withdrawal 3 years ago.
They took over that disaster, the leaving of Afghanistan.
The campaign took video of the event, even after a cemetery staffer said federal law prohibits political activity at military cemeteries. In a rare rebuke, the Army issued a statement calling the incident unfortunate and defending the employee they said was abruptly pushed aside by campaign officials.
And they say I was campaigning. The one thing I get is plenty of publicity. I don't need that.
Lulu, let's start at the top. Are the changes in the new Trump indictment a big deal?
They are. It's a cleaner indictment, and I think there was a big question after the Supreme Court ruling whether or not Smith was going to really pursue this, and he is. And the fact of the matter is that they're going to try and take this to, where it always should have been, which is into a court of law. So, yeah, I think it's a big deal, and I think it's going to answer a lot of questions that the Supreme Court left open, which are what are the limits of immunity? That was something that they left very, very open, and this is now going to help define that.
Rich, what I find remarkable is that based on the Supreme Court's ruling, the accusation, I'm not saying it's true, but the accusation that Donald Trump conspired with Justice Department officials to launch sham election theft investigations is now off the table and is immune from prosecution. I find that remarkable.
Yeah, well, their cases, there are other ways to handle this, right? Impeachment being the main one. But the indictment largely stands. He knocked out the things regarding the Justice Department to try to accommodate the court's ruling. Probably didn't go far enough in other ways to accommodate the court's ruling. But this thing is going to have zero effect on the election. If Trump doesn't win and fire him on day one, which would happen if he does win, and this thing actually makes it to trial, it's going to be a trial in 2026. This is still a long ways off.
But when you see some of the things that he couldn't be charged with in this new indictment because of the Supreme Court ruling, does it give you any pause about the Supreme Court saying that he can do these things and he's protected? Well,
the logic of the court's ruling is just that you don't want people prosecuted, presidents prosecuted for official acts. You know, if Barack Obama drones a U.S. citizen overseas in his official capacity,
they didn't define it at all. They left it so open.
And
they left it absolutely so that you have no sense of what the limits are. And so, you could interpret it that the president is now a king, or you have to define those limits. And
how is the president a king? Are there no more elections in America?
Well, of course there are elections, but if there is nothing that says that he can act in any way that he wants, and there is no way that he can be held accountable.
We have the entire system of checks and balances is intact, right? We're still a free country. And the logic of the court's decision has to do with preserving those checks and balances and honoring. Congress can't make official acts of the president illegal, right, without overstepping its constitutional bounds. So the idea that something has never happened before, that you need a president prosecuted, otherwise we're living in a monarchy or a dictatorship
We're
is
talking
absurd.
about something specific, though. We're not talking about some imaginary thing. We're actually talking about someone who did try and subvert the election, who did actually try to overthrow the transfer of power. This isn't just, we're not doing thought experiments.
Those are all bad things.
All right, even the Supreme Court isn't going to settle this. I want to talk about, because there's plenty to talk about with Donald Trump this week. The Arlington controversy. The Trump and his campaign ignored a cemetery employee who tried to stop them from campaign activity in Section 60, where some of the fallen from recent wars are buried. Kristen, did Trump's Arlington behavior undercut his message about Afghanistan and the way we got out?
I think that it did. I think that his campaign saying we were not in the wrong and we have video to prove it, but then that video has mysteriously not emerged, I think is very interesting. I think that this is just terrible. But do I think it's actually going to affect things? Just think, what was it 2 weeks ago that we were talking about Trump trying to draw this weird equivalence between the Medal of Honor and the Medal of Freedom? I mean, he has sort of picked fights that people say this is going to cost him with veterans. And, you know, the community of veterans is a very politically diverse community. He has some families there that said, yes, come with us to Section 60. And he has others that say, no, we think this guy's a disgrace.
All right, but it does get worse. Trump took pictures, smiling and giving a thumbs up at those grave sites in Section 60, and his campaign attacked the cemetery worker as a despicable individual who was suffering a mental health episode. Yeah. Kara, all but forgotten in all of this was the 13 people, 13 soldiers who died at Abbey Gate at the airport in Kabul.
This was a political event for him, and then there was some scheme around Kamala Harris too. There's all this stuff. You know, every time he manages to step in it, he steps in it, and he didn't just end there with the heinous behavior. My dad was in the military until he died. For me, this is so offensive. I can't even believe someone did this and then pushed around it.
Yeah, but how about Kristen's point? You find it offensive. A lot of stuff that he says is offensive, but it doesn't matter.
You don't have to be offended. I think most people whose parents went in the military would be offended, but that's okay. You don't have to be. But then he like tops it by doing the other thing around Kamala Harris, tweeting something about sexual activity, which is comparing her to Hillary Clinton, a really grotesque way. He just one after the next after the next. It's offensive to someone somewhere. He's not adding voters, he's subtracting voters.
Well, let's talk about one way in which he is trying to add voters. He's trying to blunt the abortion issue, which he has admitted is a tough issue since the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision, a tough issue for Republicans. He posted this week: "My administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights," and he gave some specifics.
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks. For people that are using IVF, which is fertilization, the government is going to pay for it, or we're going to get or mandate your insurance company to pay for it.
Now, we should point out that Trump's campaign announced Friday afternoon that, in fact, he is going to vote for continuing the 6-week ban on abortion in Florida. He's a Florida resident. But, Lulu, it does raise the question, how much room are pro-lifers going to give Trump to move to the center, to talk about IVF, to talk about reproductive rights, to help win the election? And if so, why are they giving him so much room?
I don't think that they're giving him room. I think what we saw, in fact, is that they're really mad about what he has said, but he's all over the place on this issue. I mean, it's great that the government now wants to pay for IVF, and the Republican is now taking that position. I've never heard a Republican ever want to take that position before. Maybe we'll get paid family leave too. I mean, you know, let's have the uniparty really. We can have Kamala Harris and Donald Trump kind of go together. I mean, it's all over the place. There's no cohesion to it, and
I believe the word she's looking for is flip-flop.
Yeah, that one.
Well, let me quickly, Rich. Do you believe that Trump means to do these things he's talking about, or is just saying it because November will come and pass? And then
he means to do them because he's scared, freaked out by the polling. And it's a headlong retreat that makes no sense. Now, he said he's going to vote against Amendment 4, which is a sweeping pro-choice law, which he suggested maybe he was going to favor with a really loose statement. So this is a party that's on retreat on this issue.